The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining Beth and I.
Hi, everybody.
Well, feels pretty good to be recording tonight in the studio on this cold northern New York night, doesn't it?
It does, because it's a little frigid out there.
Just a little bit. I would say it's colder than a witch's tit.
That's what my grandmother would say.
I think that's what all of our grandmothers would say.
Yes.
You know, we got a little bit of snow coming down. It's been mostly icy around here. Yeah. Kind of making it a little difficult traveling.
Walking
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel pretty bad for those people that we see going by walking their dogs. You know, and they're slipping and sliding.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, they're a robust type of people. Out there, I'd be like, nope. I would literally just get one of the long leashes, open up the door, just let the dog go out.
And do its business.
Sit in my chair in the living room and just let it walk out, come back. No way. But we're pretty lucky compared to some of our fellow New Yorkers, like in central New York. Hell, they got like 6 feet of snow plus.
Oh my gosh, yes. The pictures that you were showing me were incredible with the snow up to the actual roofs of the houses.
Or with their doors open and it's just nothing but a wall of snow.
Yeah.
Well, better than us. I do feel for any of you, but I'm glad it's you and not me.
Nice.
Well, we got a pretty good show. I know we always say that. But all of our shows are pretty good, I think, or we wouldn't be doing them.
Right. I would say they're pretty good, but you know.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be around anymore.
That's true.
I mean, we still have a lot of people listening to us.
We do.
Thank God.
Yes. And I mean, this is episode 193. We're not that far off from 200.
Yeah, that's right.
I know.
Well, let's get into episode 193.
All right, you're starting us off tonight.
I know, something a little unusual. If you ever find yourself driving down Mosher Road in Sand Lake, New York, chances are you will pass a historical marker with the name Hazel Drew inscribed along the top. Now, if you're anything like me, you might assume that a local woman of some importance likely lived along that spot in the road, although there isn't any house nearby. Or you might assume that she was born there and went on to become someone famous. Perhaps she was a suffragist, or the first female reporter, or doctor or congresswoman in the area, or she did something else of significant importance. But as you drive onwards, the name Hazel Drew might totally slip your mind, and you might not even give the historical marker or the person it commemorates a second thought. But if you happen to stop at the marker long enough to read it, I seriously doubt that you would just read it and then forget about it. Because the rest of the inscription says, "Ghost of a young woman said to walk the woods along the road to nearby pond, where her body was found after mysterious death, July 1908. As it turns out, the tragic story of Hazel Drew is pretty amazing, since it involves an alleged double life, an unsolved murder, a wandering ghost, and the inspiration from one of television's cult classics from the 1990s, Twin Peaks. But Hazel's story actually begins in Troy in 1888, the year she was born to Irish Methodist parents. Hazel had 6 siblings, 2 who died as children. Although the Drews were far from wealthy, Hazel was well educated. According to a New York Post article, Hazel was known to always have her nose in a book. But she was also vivacious and full of life. She was well liked because she was curious about the world and always was willing to try new things. When she was 14 years old, her aunt, who worked as a domestic servant for the city's elite, got Hazel various jobs in the homes of prominent Troy Republicans. Soon Hazel found herself employed as a governess, where she got to enjoy the finer things in life. Hazel made good money, and according to author and history professor Jerry Drake, Hazel spent a good deal of her paycheck on clothes, and she liked spending time at an amusement park with her girlfriends. She also traveled quite a bit, to both New York City and Boston. She basically became a young woman who was eager to experience life and everything it had to offer. She was also very pretty, and that, coupled with her fun-loving attitude, made her pretty popular with various young men. But Hazel was also religious. She attended church every Sunday, and she was even known for bringing her dates to church with her. Now, Hazel wasn't particularly serious about any of her suitors, although she reportedly dated a young man employed at a dentist's office more than any of her other suitors. And yet, it wasn't all that serious. Hazel seemed, by all accounts, to be far more interested in having fun with her friends and enjoying her life. When she was 19 years old, Hazel decided to go traveling across the eastern seaboard. But at some point during her trip, she fell ill and came home to her uncle's farm in Sand Lake. She was there for about a month, and her family claimed that they had a hard time getting a hold of her. On July 7th of 1908, with absolutely no explanation, Hazel showed up at her employer's house in Troy, that of Professor E.R. Carey, and quit her job. Her luggage showed up unclaimed at the Troy train station. Inside the luggage were various love letters and 2 kimonos. Hazel herself vanished. And then, according to Find a Grave, 4 days later, on July 11th, Hazel's body was discovered, floating in Teal's Pond, not far from her uncle's farm. Now, initially, police assumed that she had drowned. The district attorney suggested that it was a suicide, but an autopsy revealed that she died from blunt force trauma to the back of her head. Now, as you can imagine, the papers immediately picked up the story. It was both horrifying and tragic that such a pretty 20-year-old girl had been murdered in quiet Sand Lake. But then the stories quickly turned scandalous. People came out of the woodwork to add salacious gossip and rumors to the story, especially about how Hazel always dressed and acted above her station, and that she was undoubtedly carrying on affairs with her numerous suitors. Some even implied that she was earning extra cash from these men. People linked the following events together: that she had quit her job with no explanation, she had disappeared for a month claiming illness, and she had even gone to her dressmaker in a panic, begging her to make a new shirtwaist that she could wear for a weekend trip to Lake George. Her uncle, William Taylor, was recently widowed, and everyone said that he was depressed to the point of being suicidal. Put all of that together, and it could only mean one thing. Hazel had been pregnant, and her uncle had murdered her. Exactly why was gossiped about even more fiercely. In fact, William Taylor was the first suspect, but so were 17-year-old farmhand Frank Smith and charcoal peddler Rudolph Gunderman. Both men were seen with Hazel before her death on Taborton Road, right near the pond where her body was found. And then there were the two mystery men who were seen at the pond acting quite strangely around the time Hazel was thought to have been killed. One was sitting in a horse-drawn carriage, and the other was floundering around in the roadside bushes, as if he was looking for something. But all of the leads, and the gossip and rumors, led nowhere. The police were stumped, and the public was so enamored with the scandal of her case, whether it was truly scandalous or not, that they began taking carriage rides out to the pond like a tourist attraction, just to see the spot where she was found. Back in Troy, Hazel's bereft mother hired a psychic to help solve the case. However, the psychic offered little more than the suggestion that someone very powerful in Troy had Hazel under his control.
Not to knock the psychic or anything, but I feel bad for the mother that she felt like she needed to hire a psychic because the detectives weren't doing their jobs.
Well, that does happen where, the parents of the loved one or the family of the loved one, they feel as though law enforcement isn't really doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
So they look for other answers or other ways that they might get a lead to this.
Right.
And a psychic is usually one of those leads for some people.
Right. Although that could explain why perhaps the detectives were not doing a great job at looking into things, because maybe somebody very powerful was involved and they knew it.
Well, that could be. We just don't know.
We don't.
But after a month, the DA abandoned Hazel's case. No one was ever charged with her murder, and to this day, it remains unsolved. So, it's not hard to see why Hazel's ghost has been seen on Mosher Road. And before you shrug it off as an urban legend, I want to share a few stories with all of you, because they're pretty compelling. Sand Lake historian Bob Moore shared the following stories in an interview on News Channel 13 back in 2024. Moore has been the town historian since 2013. He said that he had got a call from an Albany cop who had recently attended a party at Teal's Pond. During the party, he noticed a pretty young blonde in a white dress, and he asked his wife who she was, because he didn't recognize her. His wife looked at him like he was crazy and said she didn't see any blonde in a white dress. So a few moments later, he asked someone else who the young woman was, and they said they didn't see anyone either. The cop said the only explanation he could come up with was that he was seeing an apparition, which is pretty interesting because if it really was Hazel's ghost, she picked a police officer to appear to. Then there was another story Moore shared. He said that a woman was driving along Averils Park one early evening near the Jiffy Mart on Orient Avenue. All of a sudden, she thought someone had appeared in front of her car and that she had actually hit them. The woman immediately got out of her car, expecting to see someone, but there was absolutely no one there and nothing in the road. Moore wondered if it was Hazel's apparition, since in 1908, she would have taken a trolley along the Orient Avenue in order to come into town. And then there's author and history professor Jerry C. Drake's experience. According to the New York Post article, Drake first heard of Hazel Drew in a dream. In 2019, a friend of his had just moved to Troy, and in his dreams, this friend handed him a book. When he opened it, there was a book plate pasted inside that read, Ex Libris Hazel I. Drew. When Drake woke up, he figured that he had to Google the name and see if it meant anything. And that's when he found the Find a Grave webpage and historical marker inscription. So he and his family went to visit his friend in Troy. While they were there, more strange things happened to him. Like he continued to have dreams featuring Hazel herself. In the dreams, she was introducing him to her family as the guy who was working on my case. When he went to visit her gravesite, a rock seemingly flew out of nowhere and landed beside him. And then there was the crow that somehow got into his Airbnb. Drake couldn't shake the feeling that Hazel's story needed to be told, and that most importantly of all, her reputation needed to be set right and repaired. He titled his book, Hazel Was a Good Girl. Jerry Drake wasn't the only writer to be influenced by Hazel's ghost. There was also Mark Frost, who along with David Lynch, created the cult classic television show Twin Peaks. Mark Frost heard about Hazel Drew from his grandmother, Betty Calhoun. He would spend each summer with her when he visited her in Sand Lake, and she would scare him with stories about Hazel's ghost haunting Teal's Pond. He based the character of Laura Palmer on Hazel Drew. For those of you who didn't watch the show back in the 90s, well, I gotta be honest with all of you. I didn't either.
I haven't seen it either. We talked about watching it recently.
Yeah, I've got it in Amazon Prime in my watch list.
Mm-hmm.
And I always intend on watching it, but I just never get to it. So with that said, I'll tell you what Google has to say about it. Twin Peaks is a surreal mystery drama centered on FBI agent Dale Cooper's investigation into the murder of homecoming queen Laura Palmer in the seemingly quaint town of Twin Peaks, Washington, uncovering dark secrets, supernatural forces, and a battle between good and evil beneath its idyllic surface. The series blends soap opera elements with horror, exploring Laura's hidden life of drugs, prostitution, and affairs, revealing a web of corruption and a demonic entity called Bob that possesses the town residents, leading to a complex narrative involving alternate realities, psychic phenomena, and the struggle for souls. What the hell?
A demonic entity called Bob. Well, now I have to see it.
Yeah. It reminds me of the, when I hear Bob as a name,
Mm-hmm.
I always think of Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray.
Oh, what about Bob?
What about Bob? Which, by the way, was an excellent movie. Twin Peaks certainly sparked some contemporary interest in Hazel Drew's case. And as for the town of Sand Lake, they've done their best over the last 118 years to keep Hazel's unsolved murder case open, including hosting roundtable discussions and interviewing locals who have family stories about what might have happened. Authors and researchers have continued to write about her, offering their own theories. But at the heart of the case is Hazel herself, a young woman whose last moments were undoubtedly terrifying and whose reputation was then horribly questioned and basically smeared when she couldn't defend herself. Today, if you wish to visit Hazel's gravesite to pay your respects, she's buried in the Brookside Cemetery in Barberville, New York. And of course, if you're driving down Mosher Road in Sand Lake, you can always stop for a moment and read that historical marker which claims her restless spirit still wanders by the pond where she was found.
That's a great story.
It is. It's so sad, though, that they had to smear her that way, because she sounded like she was just a young girl, full of life, having fun.
Working hard.
Yeah. And then she goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
They find her body. And the next thing you know, she's like the town whore. What the hell?
Right.
Why did they have to jump to that assumption?
Right. Well, because she had kimonos, not one, but two, in her suitcase.
They're freaking kimonos.
Yeah.
It's not like there was bondage equipment with them.
Right.
You know, or something bizarre.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Those people should be ashamed of themselves.
I know. But I also think it says a lot about historical markers, that you shouldn't just, fly by them. You should always slow down, if there's nobody behind you, of course, and read them.
Or, find a place to pull over, turn around, and go back and park your car and check it out.
Yes, because you never know what you're going to find on a
No,
historical
that's what
marker.
we do.
I know.
Every historical marker that we don't know. And I don't think there's many that we don't know about around here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, check them out.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, we'll be back after this short break.
Hey, did you know? 100 years ago, in 1926, things were, of course, a lot cheaper. A new home, on average, cost $7,000, and a new Ford Model T was just $500. If you rented your home, it would cost you between $25 and $50 a month. A new frying pan was just 10 cents, and a dozen eggs and a pound of bacon to fry in it was around 84 cents total. Milk, delivered straight to your door, was 18 cents a quart. If you wanted to go out to eat, it would come to less than $1 per person. And to get there, you could fill your gas tank for just 22 cents a gallon. Although this all sounds incredible, keep in mind that the average male worker put in a 50-hour work week and only earned about $20, roughly $1,000 a year. Kind of puts it into perspective, doesn't it? Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back from the break, and Beth is going to tell all you fellow wanderers about La Fonda on the Plaza.
A very cool and very haunted hotel. So, La Fonda on the Plaza in Santa Fe, New Mexico, is on the Historic Hotels Registry for good reason. Although it was built in 1922, a hotel, or Fonda, has stood on that very spot since Santa Fe was founded in the year 1607. Originally also used as a courthouse and public execution site, condemned criminals were hung in the hotel's lobby. Over the centuries, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt numerous times. And in 1821, while Captain William Becknell was forging the path that would become the Santa Fe Trail, he stayed at the hotel on the plaza. Pioneer couple William and Mary Dodson Donahoe traveled the Santa Fe Trail from Missouri in 1833. When they arrived in Santa Fe, they purchased the hotel. According to Legends of America, hundreds of frontiersmen and pioneers followed, and in 1848, soon after New Mexico became a U.S. territory, a group of settlers bought the inn and named it the United States Hotel. Understandably annoyed, the Mexican locals referred to it as the La Fonda on the Plaza Americana. By 1851, it was renamed again, this time as the Exchange Hotel. Quick to draw in outlaws, gangsters, trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, and politicians, the United States Hotel's gambling room became a hotbed for violence, deals gone wrong, and debauchery. For example, in 1857, one gambler was strung up in the hotel's backyard by an angry lynch mob. And then, a decade later, in 1867, Honorable Judge John P. Slough, Chief Justice of the Territorial Supreme Court, was shot to death in the hotel lobby. According to U.S. Ghost Adventures, Judge Slough got himself into a dispute with Captain Reinerson, a member of the territorial legislature. Reinerson wasn't a fan of the judge and tried to have him removed from office. Judge Slough retaliated by calling Reinerson a thief and a liar. Reinerson was very offended, and he confronted Slough inside the hotel, demanding that Slough apologize. When the judge refused, Reinerson took out his pistol and shot Judge Slough on the spot. Reinerson was later acquitted. There was also the time when a salesman came to town and checked into the Exchange Hotel. He was down on his luck and decided to play some cards. Of course, he lost. Feeling desperate, he gambled away his company's money as well. He was so distraught that he threw himself down the hotel's well just outside the gambling hall, and he died from his injuries. In 1870, the beloved Archbishop Jean-Baptiste Lemy's nephew, John, came to Santa Fe. John met a beautiful local woman, Doña Mercedes Chavez, and they were soon married. The Lemys threw lavish parties, and the couple were considered one of Santa Fe's elite. Meanwhile, the Archbishop hired a young architect from France, Francois Millet, to come to Santa Fe and design the cathedral. Millet and the Lemys became friends. They were seen all over town together. But soon, rumors swirled that Mrs. Lemy and Mr. Millet were way too happy together. Mercedes filed for divorce.
Doesn't say divorce there, it says licorice. What the hell?
Sometimes, when one is typing, autocorrect does funny things. She did not file for licorice.
Pretty amusing.
I was going to let it go, but then Mercedes filed for divorce, which was pretty unheard of, especially since her husband's uncle was the Archbishop. That didn't stop her and Millet from showing up all over town together, holding hands and being quite obvious with their relationship.
Well, of course he was sweet on her. She had licorice.
She kept it in her pockets and up her sleeves.
Sounds pretty yummy.
One day in September, Lemy saw Millet standing in the doorway of the Exchange Hotel. He walked right up to him and shot him point blank in the back of the head. When Mercedes heard the news, she tried to take her own life by drinking poison. Like Captain Reinerson, John Lemy was acquitted by reason of temporary insanity. In 1881, the hotel was sold again, this time to Dr. Robert Longwell and Abraham Staub. Staub was a savvy businessman, and he funded several upgrades to the hotel, including the addition of several retail shops along the front of the building. It burned down in 1912. It took 8 years, but in 1920, the Santa Fe Builders Corporation raised enough money to rebuild the site. They hired architect Isaac Hamilton Rapp, who designed it as a Spanish colonial revival-style building. And then, in 1926, it was purchased by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and then leased to Fred Harvey. Fred Harvey was a very successful hotel owner, having invented the concept of the Harvey House, a chain of luxury hotels specifically for people traveling by train across the country. At one point, he had 84 Harvey houses. A Harvey house was basically a hotel with exceptional service, fine dining, and all the luxuries anyone could ever want. He also employed highly trained waitresses who were known as Harvey girls. And he also hired a brand new architect to renovate the recently rebuilt hotel. One of the architects was a woman, Mary E. J. Coulter, and she is credited with giving the La Fonda on the Plaza its iconic look, both inside and out. The La Fonda is an imposing and impressive Pueblo-style building with several balconies, terraces, and arches. Inside, it is open and airy with many windows, colorful tiles, handcrafted chandeliers, hand-painted furniture, and exposed wooden beam ceilings. Today, it is only one of 2 remaining former Harvey houses in the country. The other one is in Las Vegas. But anyway, the La Fonda on the Plaza stayed in the Harvey house chain until 1968, when it was purchased by Sam and Ethel Ballin for $1 million. The iconic hotel at that point was in desperate need of repairs, and the couple spent years revitalizing it and turning it back into the opulent hotel it once was 40 years before. When Sam Ballin passed away in 2007, the hotel stayed in the family, but it proved to be too much for them to maintain, especially the structure itself, which had begun to crumble. Enter Jennifer Kimball. Well, actually, Jennifer had worked for the Ballins for years, so she was certainly well acquainted with the hotel. She and her brother were able to raise enough capital to completely revitalize the hotel once again, turning it back into one of Santa Fe's most impressive hotels. But, as I'm sure you've all figured out, with a 400-year history, the La Fonda on the Plaza is also known for being a little bit haunted. One of the most retold stories of a ghostly encounter took place in the 1970s. A guest was in his room when he kept hearing the loud sound of somebody walking back and forth past his door. He shrugged it off until he tried to go to sleep, and whoever it was just kept pacing back and forth past his room. He didn't see anybody when he looked, so he went back to bed, only to lie there and hear the same walking sound. Annoyed, he called the front desk to complain about this person who was incessantly walking back and forth. The front desk sent someone up to check it out. According to savingplaces.org, when the employee arrived, he did see someone in the hallway. It was a man dressed in a long black coat. But the figure entered the stairwell before he could say anything. He quickly followed the figure, and when he got to the stairwell and ran all the way down, he didn't run into anybody. It was as if the figure had just vanished. And as for who the figure might have been, well, other guests have seen him quite a bit since then. And hotel employees believe it's the ghost of the Honorable Judge Slough, the one who was shot in the lobby back in 1867. Dinner guests often enjoy the courtyard-like atmosphere of the hotel's restaurant, La Plazuela. But they also might catch a glimpse of a ghostly male figure that walks from one side of the restaurant to the center of the room before he seems to just disappear into the floor. What they might not realize is that the restaurant sits where the inner courtyard once was, which also held the well that the distraught businessman threw himself down after his terrible gambling losses.
I knew it. When you were reading it, I was like, oh, it's got to be where the well was.
Yep. And there are other ghosts there, too. Apparently, there is a spirit that haunts the Santa Fe ballroom, as well as the hallway near La Terraza, the hotel's other restaurant. There's the ghost of a cowboy that haunts the bar, and the young bride in white that still lingers in the former wedding suite, room 510. Her brief backstory seems to be more lore than anything, but I'll tell you the story anyway. It's pretty brief. Allegedly, she was murdered on her wedding night by a jealous ex-lover. But whether that's true or not, the ghost of a beautiful young woman in a wedding dress is seen at the hotel and has been for over 40 years. She's been seen in the lobby, in the elevators, and also in the basement. Now, because we do our due diligence, or at least we try, I did Google deaths at the La Fonda, and other than the historical ones that I told you about, the judge and the salesman, I didn't find any other reports. So I can't say that this young bride wasn't murdered. I can't say if it happened or if it didn't happen, but I didn't find any proof that it did. But people are certainly seeing the ghost of a woman in a wedding dress. Like Becky Ortiz, the director of rooms at the hotel for over 30 years. According to an interview in the Santa Fe New Mexican from 2020, she saw the woman in white herself 33 years prior. She actually watched the apparition walk right through the front desk. She, however, had heard that the bride had died in her room after a poker game, and her husband may or may not have died at the same time. Ortiz went on to say that she's had other encounters with other spirits, especially on the mezzanine level of the hotel. Her second year on the job, as she was walking along the mezzanine, she could have sworn that someone was walking behind her. She said, quote, "But it sounded like they were wearing spurs that were scraping across the tile. It was in the dead of winter, not many travelers here. I thought it might have been a guest, but there was nobody behind me. But I could feel him and I could hear him, plain as day." End quote. Which, of course, sounds like the cowboy ghost that I had mentioned earlier. During the COVID shutdown, employees reported more encounters than ever in the mostly empty hotel.
That seems to be the story everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The upticks in UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, ghostly encounters in places seem to have went up.
Yes.
I think because people are paying more attention to the night sky, to what was going around them.
Yeah, and I think in the case of a hotel, you don't have all the sounds of all the people staying there, so you're more apt to be like, what the hell was that?
Right.
Yeah.
COVID sucked, but it did bring people more together. And the sounds around us were pretty much non-existent. Everything kind of came to a standstill. So what a perfect time to Do some ghost hunting,
Mm-hmm.
some sky watching, or get out in the woods.
Well, these employees were having ghost encounters whether they wanted them or not. So Ed Pulsiver, who was the director of sales, shared in the article that he'd worked there for 9 years before he had an experience of his own, which was during the shutdown. He said that for weeks, as soon as he arrived at work in the morning, he'd be greeted by the first floor elevator doors constantly opening and closing. When asked if it could simply have been an electrical issue, he said no, because each time the button summoning the elevator would be lit up as if someone had pushed it. Employees have also heard their names being called out in the hotel, even prior to the shutdown, like gift shop manager Linda Troynak. In 2015, she was walking from the garage past the bathrooms when she heard a young voice call her name. She turned around, expecting to see someone, but she was alone. She even peered over the second floor railing to see if there was anyone in the dining room below her, but there was nobody there. John Nuanez, the director of engineering, has also heard his name called out by a disembodied voice, not once, but 3 times. The first time, he was walking down a hallway and clearly heard a woman call his name. Then, 2 days later, while he was walking down the same hallway, he heard the same female voice call his name 2 more times. He said that there were guests around, but it wasn't anybody that he knew. So they wouldn't be calling him out by his first name because he didn't know anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nuanez has been at the La Fonda for 40 years. And until the disembodied voice, he'd never had any experiences of his own. But after the disembodied voice, he had another experience. He said he was down in the basement when he saw someone wearing a blue uniform standing in the boiler room. He turned, and the figure just vanished. His wife, Mary, also works at the hotel. The couple actually met there, which is kind of sweet. Mary, who is the head of housekeeping, had her first paranormal experience there a decade ago. She says in the article that she felt something shove her into a wall. She wasn't scared, but she was a little shocked by the aggression of it. And then during the shutdown, she also experienced the disembodied voice calling her name while she was on the mezzanine. For the most part, other than Mary being shoved, the spirits at the La Fonda aren't menacing in any way, although some things are scarier than others, like the times they've heard a baby crying in the empty rooms and can't pinpoint where it's coming from. Or the time one of the housekeepers went into one of the empty rooms to freshen it up, and she could clearly see the shape of someone lying in the bed under the covers. Alarmed that somebody was in the room, she ripped the covers back, fully expecting to surprise and confront someone, but the bed was empty. And there was the time Raudel Rosales found a child's handprints on a bathroom mirror on the second floor during the shutdown, when she knew for certain that no children had been in the hotel. Rosales had worked at the hotel for 16 years at the time of the article and said that she'd encountered the woman in the bridal dress 3 times and that she'd also seen the ghost of former owner Sam Ballin on the terrace after he'd passed away. She said she knew it was him because it looked just like him, right down to the same hat and boots that he always wore. And yet, sometimes the ghosts can be totally mischievous, although some guests might not see it that way. For example, there was one guest who came down to the front desk and insisted that someone must have broken into her room while she had been gone for the day. When the front desk ran an electric key lock reading, they could prove that no one had gone into the woman's room. And so, there was no way to explain how all of her clothing was thrown around and that some of her socks and her underwear were now hanging from the chandelier over her bed. Unless, of course, the woman did it herself. But why would you do that? I mean,
I don't know. Maybe she was like, oh, damn, this is what I packed. Oh, I've just had enough of it. And she just threw it up. Why'd I pack these socks and underwear?
And then she regretted it and needed to get them down, but couldn't reach. So she concocted a story to have the front desk come get them. Said it was a ghost.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
No.
But none of it does. None of that makes sense. I mean, I would imagine look pretty nice, though, at night when you turn on the lights and you see all these, underwear and stuff. Especially if they're different colors. Can you imagine the nice shades? Pink thong here, red thong there. Maybe a nice, purple negligee hanging over on the other light.
Right. Plus the socks. Don't forget the socks.
Yeah, I don't want to. Unless they're stockings. Like lace stockings. I don't care about socks.
Yeah, it kind of ruins your little fantasy you got going.
Yeah.
Well, if you're ever in Santa Fe and you want to stay in a hotel that's been there for over 100 years, on a site that has had a hotel on it for 400 years, and has some great potential for a ghost sighting, the La Fonda on the Plaza sounds like the perfect place to spend a night.
It really does.
I know, it sounds cool.
Sounds like a great place to have an experience.
I know. And the building is so cool looking. I mean, it's, Pueblo style. So it's the clay brick, multiple stories with all the... it's so cool.
Oh, I could actually picture it in my mind without even seeing it.
And
what it would look like.
My hand gestures that I was making. Yeah. My unnecessary hand gestures.
I get it. I talk with my hands too.
Well, everybody, if you would like to know more about Hazel Drew or about La Fonda on the Plaza, you can always check our sources in our show notes.
And with that said, join us next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.